All right. So here with me to talk about something I think that happens all too often. We have our reverseselling.com head coach, Dominic Zimmer. And Dominic, appreciate your time this morning.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Brandon. Good to be here. This is a subject, a topic that, is constantly coming and going in our industry. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%. And that is, just for the audience sake, talking about sales slumps, what to do to potentially avoid them so you don't get into them moving forward. And then I think more importantly, Dom, is to talk about, well, what happens when I'm in one? How do I get
Mhm.
myself out of them? And so, yeah, this is something that happens all too often. They're very painful. And I hope that what we will talk about on today's episode will help people navigate their way out of these things. So I've got a bunch of different notes. I know that you do too. So
Hey,
why
before
don't
you
you?
start,
Yeah,
yeah, let
please.
me let me start by because I feel like we're probably in alignment. We didn't really talk about this beforehand, but I think we are on the same page. So years ago, Brandon, you gave me this formula, and I put it on a post-it note, and I'll read it because you probably can't see it here. But this is
No
this is
kidding. I
my
can't wait to see this.
this is my real estate like playbook, right? It's everything that we learn and everything I've learned that has worked for me in real estate over the years. But right on the cover, this little post-it note is this formula, and it says mindset times action times skills plus accountability equals success or failure.
I love it. So good, man. And
And
now
I've
we
had that
call
for
that.
years. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. That has manifested into what we now call our reverse selling uh, success triangle, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's just you take those concepts and you put them all together, and you can't help but to win. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love that, Dom. And so let's jump into it. For me, I have broken this down, this sales slump, into a framework, which I often do with everything, as you know, because the way my mind works is if I have a process to follow, then I can just follow it. And it's very useful. And I've broken this down into 3 different steps. So I think what could be useful for the audience today is I'll go through my 3-step process. And then I'd
Mhm.
like to kind of go through your process and how you deal with sales slumps.
Yep.
So mine has 3 different steps. Step 1 is to diagnose the cause, not the symptom. Step 2
Mhm.
is to self reflect. And then step 3 is to redefine success. So let's get into step number 1, which is diagnosing the cause, not the symptom. Well, the great thing about what it is that we do, while we all still remain human before we become robots and AI takes over the world, we can look to human psychology for a lot of the answers. And there are 2 things, Dominic, at play here that I believe are the root cause of sales slumps. One is something psychologists call self imposed prophecies. And these occur when our own expectations and the way in which we see ourselves influence our actions and our behaviors. And then the other thing that is at play is something psychologists call the Pygmalion effect, which is a type of imposed self fulfilling prophecy that states the way you treat others impacts how they respond to you. So when I think about sales slumps, I'm like, this is exactly what is happening here. So let me give you an example. All right. I have an image that will show you in the audience this in real time. Can you see my screen?
I can. Yeah. Yep.
So this is the self-fulfilling prophecy and Pygmalion effect at work. Here's what happens. So we have our actions towards others. And think about this in terms of the person that is in a sales slump. Maybe they start to become ultra attached to the outcome. They start coming across very desperate, very needy, very aggressive. And that then impacts how others start to see us, which causes them to behave or act a certain way towards us, which then reinforces this belief that I'm in a sales slump, which then influences my behaviors or my actions to say, well, I'm in a slump, man. I don't even know if this thing works. I don't, they're just questioning everything now. I'm not even going to make my calls, and you start making less prospecting calls. Then you, not only do you start making less prospecting calls, the ones that you do make are complete dog doo-doo because of all of the reasons I just mentioned. And that self-imposed prophecy, psychologists have proved that the way in which you see yourself, and the agent is saying, I'm in a slump, I suck at this, I'm no good, all these things become one's reality, Dom, because the way in which they see themselves comes out in their behavior, in their delivery. And that delivery then impacts, of course, how the prospect responds to us. And the prospect says, no, I'm not interested. And then that agent saying, see, dude, I just suck at this. And because I suck at this, I'm not even going to, you know what? The hell with it. I'm not even going to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it meshes very, very well in a different way with my first note. You're a big sports guy, I know, and I know you know who Pat Riley is, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, the head coach of the Lakers back in the glory days. And it might have been his first book, he talked about loser syndrome, where you get into this.
Spot on.
Yeah, you get into this doom loop where once you are not winning anymore, you're losing. It just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You forget how to win, and the mindset starts to go away. Man, I'm a loser. We just can't get this right. We can't make the winning shot. We can't get a steal. We can't get an assist. And so this plays in exactly to what you're saying, and you got to fix your mindset, which I imagine is on your list of things to talk about, right? You got to get that mindset fixed so you can break out of this doom loop. And I have some ideas on how to do that, and they're kind of in alignment with what Pat Riley did with the Lakers, but the principles are the same, I'm sure.
Unbelievable, because we did not prep for this episode beforehand. And all that means is that the truth is the truth, right? And so step one, again, is really looking at, okay, what Pat Riley calls the doom loop, right?
Yeah,
and
syndrome, yeah.
And all psychologists call it is a negative feedback loop because of those two things. Is the self-imposed prophecy. You have negative self-talk, which impacts your behavior, and then that behavior impacts how others perceive you, which reinforces that negative self-talk. I'm just no good at this. I can't get an appointment. I can't generate a lead. I suck at this. I'm not good at sales. All of those reasons. Now, step two is self-reflection. So what I mean by that is this. If somebody's in a sales slump, Dominic, what I highly recommend they consider doing is this, is to record their phone calls and remove the emotion and go back and watch some game film and see how you are coming across. Because to hear yourself after you've said what you said, what often happens is, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's what I sound like. Yes. That's what the prospect is hearing. And you start to have some self-awareness to say, well, maybe that's it. I mean, that's not me. And you can start to alter yourself when you can see yourself from a 30,000 foot view in game film. You could start to see how others are perceiving you. And the other thing in self-reflection is to then track your prospecting numbers closer than you ever have before. Because here's what we know is the data doesn't lie. The data doesn't care about your feelings. It has no regard for one's emotions. It just presents the facts. And here's what we know about tracking your numbers. I did this with an agent that I was coaching one-on-one, actually, funny enough. I just remember this. He was all emotional. He was in a sales slump. We started to look at the ratios. And we said, well, wow, things aren't as bad as maybe we thought they were, number one. And number two, we can start to tell the story based on the facts, the numbers, on, hey, here's what we need to do, the actions and the behaviors that we need to focus on that will lead to the results that you desire. Which brings me to point 3, and then we'll get into your notes, which is to redefine success. And here's what I mean by that. Because when someone is in a sales slump, that is an emotional state. And typically we tie that slump to result-based goals, where in reality, we need to have action-based goals. And once we have the numbers, we can redefine success not by the results, but rather the actions in which we are in control of. And the best way I've ever heard this put is this. If I were to ask you, Dominic, without you doing anything right now, go ahead, increase your heartbeat. Could you do it?
Yeah, no.
That's a result. The action that would lead to an increased heart rate might be going on a run. If I ask you to go on a run, you absolutely could do that. Why? Because it is an action. It is a behavior that we are in control of. And so redefining success in step number 3 is to do just that, Dom, is for an agent to look at what are the actions and the behaviors that I am in control of, the going on the run. And then I base my emotions on the behaviors and doing those behaviors on a consistent basis, which then will end up increasing the result that I'm after. Those are my 3 steps on how to get through it. And they're real simple. They're really straight to the point. But when you look at this, you say, okay, I can do all of that. I can wrap my mind around that. What are your thoughts? And I'm curious to see kind of what your notes are on this.
Yeah, 100%. So because this is something that comes up all the time, especially in real estate sales, but I'm sure in sales all across the board, I started writing about how to get out of a slump. Then I thought, it's probably more important. The way we approach it with our clients is first we have to talk about how do we end up here? And this is not necessarily a new agent as much as an agent that had a little bit of success right out of the gate. For example, maybe a new agent that burned through their sphere. Now they're like, shoot, what do I do? So we have to talk about what causes a slump. If you were doing sales and now you don't have sales, the reason you don't have sales now is lack of pipeline maturity.
Great point.
That's number one. That's why you are in a slump, is you had some level of success going, you had some action, had some sales, and what you were doing at that time is maintaining your income and stopping income producing activities, which in our business is prospecting. However you prospect, whether that is picking up the telephone and talking to people, holding open houses, standing in front of Home Depot, passing out business cards, whatever you do to meet people and talk to people, you stopped doing that either entirely or at the level that you were doing it to get the business that got you going to begin with. And so I wrote down, we must continue income producing activities no matter what level of success we are enjoying at that particular moment. Because if you don't do it, you're always going to find yourself in a slump.
It's a great point.
Anything you would add to that?
Yeah, I just want to add one thing to that point, and then we can get into it deeper. When you were talking about that, I was thinking about, not to relate everything back to sports, because I know not everyone's a sports fan, but it's easy to understand. And that is that the athlete that reaches elite performance always ties it back to preparation, right? Always. They always relate it back to putting in the reps, putting in the work, which got me these results, always. And the reality is, the athletes that stay at the top, it isn't like Tiger Woods hits 10,000 balls a week, goes and wins, a major PGA, tournament, and then all of a sudden doesn't stop. He stops hitting the golf balls. No, if anything, he probably hits more. And because of that, he wins. And I think that's what I thought about when you were talking, because it's so common in real estate. The agent who reaches success, and this has to do with well, I won't get it too deep into it, but the agent that reaches success often stops doing the things that led her to the success in the first place, and complacency starts to set in. And that's what I was thinking about.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And back to the sports analogy again, some of these athletes, these high level athletes, the ones that come to mind are like, I'm not a big basketball fan, but Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, all these greats, they watch their film incessantly. They watch what's going on. They're always first to the gym in the morning before practice. They practice harder than anybody else. For us, that means role play, role play, role play. It means scripts training. It means filming yourself in your presentation. It means doing small things. Like one of the things we coach here is to make your calls live on Facebook, do your listing presentation live on Facebook, record that, and then you can do things like you can make your calls, and then you can go back and play your calls, and you can put the phone down so you can't see yourself, and now you're just listening to how you sound in your presentation.
Great
Right? Am I
point.
engaging? Do I sound good? Right? And then yeah, and then we take and we watch ourselves on the phone, or we watch ourselves in our presentation, and we turn off the sound. Are we engaging to look at? How do we look? Are we
Mm.
smiling on the phone? Are we smiling when we're presenting? I mean, those are a few small tactical things there. The
But
bigger picture. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Brandon.
no, I just real quick, I was just typing on my phone to look this up. Not that, listen, for the record, I want Steph Curry and the Warriors to beat the Lakers and LeBron. However, this was a headline across all sports news outlets that LeBron showed up 5 hours early for the game Monday night to prep for the game that they in fact won, that went up 3-1 in the series. That's exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. And so my point three was okay. So now you're in a slump. You know what caused it. Now you're there. So we can't keep rehashing that. How do you get out of it? How do you get out of it? How does a sports team get out of a slump? You got to get a win. So you remember
Mm.
what it's like to win. You remember the process of winning. And going back to Pat Riley's book and all these superstars, like when they get in a slump, a batter, when they get in a slump, they do more batting practice. They take more at bats. And the words I wrote down here, I wrote 2 words down: massive action.
Mm.
Whatever you're doing right now isn't getting you where you want to be. So you've got to improve your skills, and you've got to take more action than you think is necessary. Double, triple, quadruple. Because let's be honest, if you're a real estate agent and you don't have any deals going, what are you doing with your day if you're not
Yeah.
talking to people?
Yeah,
So
no, it's a great point. And that's what it's so funny. That's right in line with my step 3, which is to redefine success. In other words, to get lost in action.
yeah,
So when one, let me just get real practical. Because sometimes I talk about things philosophically in my head, they're clear, but the audience is like, well, what are you talking about practically? So practically, what I'm talking about is getting lost in action. That means conversations. That redefining success, Dominic, is when an agent says, okay, I know I want listings. I know I want appointments. I know I want leads. However, I can't control that. The same way we can't control our heartbeat, the same way you can't control how your liver is, uh, get your liver to release some more enzymes. Go ahead, do it. You can't do it. You can't control that. You can control what you eat, what you drink, what you don't eat. That's what I'm talking about. You
mm-hmm.
can control the number of hours you put forth. You can control, okay, today I'm going to talk to 47 people today. It might take me 4 hours, it might take me 6 hours, but I can control that. And as a result, that's what I mean by redefining success. That's what I mean by getting lost in the action. If one can put their head down and say, okay, I'm going to focus on 30 conversations a day. That's it. That's how I define success. My day was great if I had my 30 conversations. Not what happened. The results I can't control. What happens is the results then take care of themselves.
Yeah, and I'm glad you clarified that, because I'm sure, yeah, you are a high level guy, look a big picture guy, and I'm sure there's agents out there going, yeah, but what do I do? What do I
Yeah,
do?
yeah.
And what do you do? I mean, all real estate, all sales transactions happen as a result of an interaction with another human being.
Great
And
point.
so Yeah, what do? We have to talk to other human beings. And in our business, we start out by talking to people who own a home and
That's
finding
right.
out if there is, in fact, because we can't help everybody, right? And that's okay. But we want to talk to as many people as we can so we can find somebody that does need our help, whether it be
That's right.
now or 6 months from now or a year from now, which by the way brings up the next note that I had in massive action. If you can I bring that up?
Roll.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
roll.
So obviously in our business, when you're in a slump or anytime, you are looking for that paycheck that's going to cash in 2 weeks from now or 30 days from now, right? Everybody gets hung up because, yeah, let's face it, not people aren't doing all the actions they need to be doing. So you're always chasing that paycheck that is going to cash on June 15th, right? I got to have it, got to have it, got to have it. So we get ultra focused on the low hanging fruit, which, obviously we want to harvest that, but we forget to look at long-term pipeline maturity type business, which is talking to people who might not be ready to do something until Thanksgiving. A lot of times we forget about those people, but who out there wouldn't want to be selling a home at Thanksgiving, right?
No, that's a great
And the
point.
chances of calling somebody on Halloween and getting a listing for Thanksgiving, pretty low, pretty
Yeah.
low. But if you talk to that person now and you have a great conversation with them and you follow a known follow-up procedure, then the chances of having that business 6 months down the road or next spring even, heck, who wouldn't love to have 5, 6 deals ready to go for a year from now? And so that's how we get out of a slump. We massive action, we take massive action, and while we're doing that, we're building the pipeline for 6, 8, 9, 10, 12 months from now, so we're not in a slump at this time in 2024.
Great point, Dom. And here's what you reminded me of. Going back to massive action again. We make the goal. Okay, so let's get real in the weeds, real
Oh yeah.
practical. I'm talking to Susie Q. The slump agent is, how do I get this lead? How do I set this appointment? What do I need to say? They're really attached to Betty Sue agreeing to let me over. So I come across like, Betty, let me just come over. And you just become that little boy on prom night. You start to get really desperate. When we redefine that success is not setting the appointment, it's not getting the lead, it's just having the conversation. Because now you aren't attached to what Betty Sue says. I don't care if she gives me the appointment or not. That's not how I define success. I define success with having 30 conversations with Betty Sue today. And I know, based on the data, that if I have 30 conversations with Betty Sue's, that I will get 3 leads, that I will set an appointment. But I don't focus on that, number one. Number two, you talked a lot about pipeline today. I was having a conversation with an agent that I'm coaching right now, and it takes people, what I have learned, it takes people about a year to understand pipeline maturity. They don't get it verbally. They don't get it until it happens. It's kind of like being a parent. Like, you don't get it until you actually have kids. Pipeline maturity is the same way. You don't understand the value of it until you actually have a pipeline. And I was talking to the agent that you and I know very, very well. And he's like, Brandon, I got to tell you something. You said something to me 6 months ago that kind of went in one ear and out the other. And you told me that what was going to happen. And you talked about this pipeline maturity thing that, the work you're doing right now might not manifest for 3, 6, 12 months into the future. And that when that day comes, you will look back on this and say, oh, wow, I wasn't just on the hamster wheel. I was building a pipeline. For a new salesperson, those words have no relevancy until it happens. Until you prospect on a daily basis, no matter how you feel, and you wake up 6 months from now and you got 3 listings from people you talked to 4.5 months ago, you say to yourself, oh my gosh, I just got paid today for work that I did in the past. What would happen if I continue to behave this way? And to your point, that's how an agent builds a consistent business where there aren't any slumps. It's a great point.
Yeah. Exactly. Did we cover it all? That's how you recognize you're in a slump. That's how you prevent getting in a slump, and that's how you get out of one once you find yourself in one. Yeah. What do they say? If you find yourself in a hole, stop digging.
It's great. That's so good.
Do something different. take massive action, right? So yeah,
Right.
call people, talk to lots of people, always be when you're in a slump, always be in the business, right? You're making 30, 40, 50 contacts a day. You're holding a couple open houses. You're door knocking, getting in front of as many potential clients as you possibly can. I mean, your whole day should be spent talking to people. I guess that's the bottom line, right? Pat Riley used to work his players into the ground, right? They'd outwork everybody. Every practice, players hated it until they started winning.
It's great. Great way to end it, Dom. Thank you so much. And for agents that are listening or watching the show, if you guys are interested in having a coaching relationship with Dominic and I, feel free. I'll put a link underneath this video, Dominic. They can click on it, find out more about our Listing Agent Academy coaching program, and they can determine if they want to get involved with us or not. So listen, Dom, I appreciate your time like always, my friend, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Have a good one, Brandon.